Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Creators Outlet right here on Outright Geekery. It's me, and today I'm joined by Mr. Dylan Andrews. Dylan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm thrilled to be on. I love being able to talk about my work, and I want everybody to know I have a Kickstarter going right now, so I'm sure I'll be talking about that. But thank you so much for having me. Well, it's great to be here.
Thanks. Now, tell us about your comic book journey, how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I started reading comics when I was a kid, like most people that are into comics. I started, I think Frank Miller's Wolverine was probably one of my earliest books. I remember getting at like a gas station and reading that. What I would do is every time, I think it was actually issue 4 where he cuts the briefcase and like the cocaine falls out. That first page where he's in silhouette is one of my favorites of all time. And I would take a marker, like a red marker, and draw in his claws. So every time he just was making fists without the claws, I would draw those claws in on every page. So I remember ruining a lot of comic books that way just by drawing in them. But yeah, that was kind of my first thing. And then, of course, I loved just getting caught in the stories. And in the 80s, the Claremont X-Men stuff. And then Mark Silvestri, he was a huge influence on what I do. Or it's just I love his work. And then Jim Lee's stuff. And then when the Image explosion happened and they all did the big Image push, that was massive for me. I remember seeing Todd McFarlane and Eric Larson's Spider-Man stuff, and then knowing that they're doing their own books, that was a thrill. That's one of the highlights of being able to grow up during that time. And I think that people now, maybe, I think older readers still remember that time as that energy and that excitement. And yeah, I want comic books to come back to that. I want comic books to have that energy and excitement now. And then, of course, there was the bubble burst in the late 90s, early 2000s. And that was when I was in school. So I would draw a lot as a kid. I have a lot of artists in my family. My father, my uncle, and my sister, my cousin, they're all art teachers and artists. And so this idea is I was always drawing. I always had sketchbooks. I was always working a lot on my own characters and creating stories. And then once I went to Syracuse University, the option was either like, oh, should I do illustration or should I do graphic design? And that was around the time when comic books imploded. So comic book stores were closed. That wasn't really a thing people were doing anymore. So I was like, well, geez, I don't know if being an illustrator, that's something that's an option. So I decided to do graphic design and communication design because I knew that I could learn publishing. I could learn print production. I could learn layout. I could learn, and it would kind of all kind of feel similar. So after school, comic books were still at a pretty low point. So there just wasn't a lot going on. I didn't go to conventions. I kind of lost touch with it a little bit. But I was always reading stuff. I was always looking for new books. Always trying to find new art that I really liked. So then worked professionally in publishing for years, corporate. And then I just have loved making books and making comics. And I would spend all my time at my local comic shop. And I was seeing that on the racks, there were signed comics. And I was saying to the guy who owns the place, I'm like, who's signing these? Like, I don't understand. He's like, oh, the local creators live in town and they make these books and they come in and sign them. So I was like, people actually can do this. There's artists in Portland, Maine that create comic books and have them on the local shelf here in this store. So I was like, that's my goal. My goal was to just make a comic book and get it in that store. And so that was what I pushed for. I was like, I'm going to just take my book and like stick it on the shelf and they won't know. And so just doing that and chatting with people and meeting people. And then there's a lot of great local talent in Portland, Maine. There's a lot of artists, a lot of creators, a lot of my friends. So being able to kind of see how they work professionally, what was required to self-publish, to do campaigns like Kickstarter and how they would do conventions. And everybody's very, very welcoming. So it was Joe Schmalke, who's doing stuff with Scout now, Black Caravan. Incredible talent, good buddy of mine. He was like, yeah, you can make comics, just make comics. I'm like, really? All right. Ben Bishop, another one of my friends, he was in Portland. He was like, yeah, you could do this. Come with us. Let's do conventions. Let's work in a studio. And then a lot of other great talent. Sean Murphy, I know just kind of through the store. He's a local guy. I mean, he's, a superstar at this point, but he's just a guy who lives in Portland, Maine. And, you'd run into him at the shop all the time. So yeah, a really great energy. I loved that sort of feel. And so I just started doing conventions and traveling. I did a lot on the East Coast and just started making my own comics. And that's what I'm still doing today.
Makes me wonder if I saw you at an East Coast convention.
Maybe. I'm up and down the East Coast. I've done New York, I've done Heroes, I've done a couple in New Hampshire, like Granite State, which is awesome. Double Midnight, those guys are great. Done a few in Portland, Maine, but there's not as many in Portland, Maine anymore. Of course, there's no conventions this year, but Old School Show in New Hampshire, Massachusetts. I did Massive years ago. I did, what were the other ones in Massachusetts? Hotel shows, a lot of altered reality shows. Those guys are great. I love doing their conventions. So
Boston Comic Con.
Yeah, done Boston, Fan Expo Boston, and then I was going to do that new one this year. I can't remember the name of it, but Ace Comic Con. So yeah, a bunch of great East Coast events. And that's the great thing about being on the East Coast is we can just kind of travel up and down doing shows. So that's what I would do all summer for the last 3 years, is just hit the road with my friends and sleep on the floor in a hotel and just make comics and sell comics and meet people and do commissions. So it's been really great. It's kind of weird this year to not have any, which is why I have the Kickstarters going and stuff. I didn't realize that it's a lot of work, obviously, to do these events, to travel. But you've been to shows. There's an energy to it that you can't capture unless you're there in the room with everyone, showing them your work and talking about what they like about comic books and art and stories. And there's the magic to it for sure.
Oh yeah, there was. I live in Taunton, Mass.
Oh, cool.
So I covered Rhode Island Comic Con last November, and there was a definite there's a definite energy in the room when you go in there. But I mean, I turned into a 10-year-old kid because I got to go in early because I was with press. I'm handicapped, so I'm in a wheelchair, so they'll let me in extra early. Mm-hmm. So I wheel around the corner in the on the second level, and I come around the corner, and I'm like face to face with Neil Adams.
Whoa!
So he's like, "Hi, how you doing?"
Cool.
He wasn't grumpy, Neil. He was nice. I'm not mad at anybody yet, Neil. So I spent like 45 minutes talking to him and his daughter and his assistant. Mm-hmm. And I also got to meet later on that day. We did like an on the spot interview with Marty Abrams, the guy who created the Mego toy line back in the 70s.
Cool.
60s and 70s, and I talked to a lot of like independent guys, an illustrator that we had on just the other day that I know from the area that does much like you. He's not making comics right now, but he's doing like all the sketch covers and various other things, and he'll be at like if there's a convention, he's at it. He does about 45 a year. Yeah,
I saw Neil Adams in the San Diego airport with my wife, and I was like, "That's Neil Adams," and she's like, "I don't know. It's just a man with a suitcase. He looks sweaty and unhappy." I'm like, "Yeah, we're not going to say hi right now, but it's cool that that's him. You got to see him." And so, those convention run-ins, meeting the people that you're a fan of. I mean, I've been to San Diego a few times, and that seeing Todd McFarlane and just being like, that guy is an icon. I mean, that he's done everything. I mean, he's just redefined, the game. So I'm like, Todd, huge fan. He's like, Derek, I'm like, can I get a photo with you? Was that cool? After he did a speech, a panel. He's like, yeah, sure, but yeah, come on up, don't far away. That's cool. And so he was like taking photos and just chatting with people. And I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. And then just kind of walking with him as he was walking to his next panel. I'm like, this is crazy. So those sort of moments, you can only kind of have that energy at a convention. And I'm hoping that we're able to get back to that. But, the great thing about social media is we're able to still kind of connect this way. And so I can still share my work and still, show people what I'm doing. And there's less traveling, which is nice. But I do love being able to have a table at a show and get to the show early and get to go through the long boxes. I look for trades. I usually get a lot of trades. So I love being able to do that before the show opens. So like New York, it's crazy because you're just in there like an hour or so before the throngs of people, the huge crowds. And you're able to just kind of run up and down that huge convention center, the Javits, pretty much, alone, just with the other vendors. And so just I do love that. I do miss that energy. And I'm sure we'll be back to it at some point. But right now, we're doing this. So this is great, too.
Let's reach out to a whole bunch of new people.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing. And thank you so much for having me on. I want to be able to tell people that I have a comic book on Kickstarter right now. It's called Cyst, the skin grafter. It looks like that, cystcomic.com. And what I've tried to do over the last few years is create the Dylan-verse. My buddy Bill Walk was like, it's the Dylan-verse. And I'm like, I love it. So I want to have a bunch of characters that have interconnecting stories. And I did... I'll show you volumes 1 and 2 of my series archive of the Warhood Odyssey, right? So that's volume 1 and that's volume 2. So these are trades collecting all my individual issues. It's all black and white, outlaw, indie comics sort of stuff. But archive, the Warhood Odyssey takes place in this future world. And then my most recent campaign was for the Oppressors. And the Oppressors takes place in current time chronology. And then the backup story is Cyst. And then Cyst takes place in the past. So there's kind of 3 different genres I wanted to work in. So I wanted to do sci-fi, which is the future story archive. I want to do like a masked vigilante modern story, which is Oppressors versus. And then I wanted to do like a sword and sorcery Conan sort of story, a little bit more monsterish. And that's the story in the past, which is Cyst, which is what I'm working on now. And we have 45 backers currently. This is the first week of launch. And we've almost hit goal. And the goal is within reach. So if anyone wants to, they can go to cystcomic.com and get a book or get a bundle with those other books. If you want to get a set or original art, commissions, I have, and I'll flip the camera and show you, but I have a lot of 11 by 17 pages. So there's some original art levels available and commission levels available. And I have my buddies that were nice enough to contribute artwork. So Bill Walco, Luis Rivera, Ian Chase Nichols, and Chris Vance, incredible artists, incredibly talented. And they were kind enough to offer up artwork for the campaign. And those are still available also. So I love doing crowdfunding. I love doing Kickstarters. This is like my 9th Kickstarter, I think. So I have always hit goal. I've always fulfilled. And I'm really excited to have this book in everyone's hands because the comic is done. Issue number 1 of Cyst is finished. I've drawn it all. I've lettered it all. I've pre-pressed it all, done all the layout. It's at the printer. So I just need to hit goal so I can get the funding to be able to get it distributed to everyone and then move on to the next thing because I have all the puzzle pieces in place now. And now I want to have the world kind of congeal together. So that's the next part. That's the next chapter.
Get your own mini library going before you have to set up at a new convention.
Well, that's the thing is I said, okay, 2020 is not what I envisioned. It's funny, at the beginning of this year, my wife was like, buy a calendar. Gosh, darn it. You're always asking me what you're doing this weekend, what the next convention is. She's like, just buy a big wall calendar and we'll hang it on the wall and we'll write in all the cons. So I'm like, all right. So I was like, this is going to be the most organized I've ever been with this. So I was writing in all the conventions. Started off with Chicago. I was at C2E2 in March. And everybody's like, hey, I heard there's this thing going around. I wonder if it'll be a problem. And it's like, I don't know. I flew here on an airplane. Seems fine. We're all here in this huge convention center. What could possibly go wrong? So at Chicago, people were like, hey, let's just fist bump and not shake hands. And that was kind of the first real indication I had that it's like, people are cautious. That's strange. So little did we know. So then I had written down in this wall calendar all the conventions, and it's like canceled, postponed. And the only one, I took the calendar, I threw it out. I'm like, this year is in the trash can. Let's not worry about what could have been. Let's instead focus on just drawing every day, creating every day, and trying to be really productive so that I come out of 2020 with just tons of new stuff. So if I'm at a convention, because I've been doing conventions, you go 3 years in a row to the same show, and people are like, oh yeah, I already got this one. What else? Do you have anything else that I haven't seen yet? It's like, geez, I've been on the road so much that the stuff I have is, maybe a new print, but doing an entire comic book takes, months, especially when I do everything myself. It's, it's a time consuming idea. So I want to come out of 2020 with a bunch of new stuff and a bunch of fun ideas and a bunch of new characters and a bunch of new concepts, and just have stuff to show people when I'm tabling, so that people go, oh wow, I haven't seen this before. I missed you not being around in 2020. Look at this cool new stuff. I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. Thanks so much. So that's kind of the thinking.
When you're trapped at home and you're a writer and an artist, and there's not much else for you to do.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with a lot of freelancers like myself. We had to, and I had to get really good at creating a routine. And I think a lot of people that were kind of thrown off were like, oh wait, my routine is I get up, have my coffee, I go to the office. And I'm like, well, no, that's the same thing with my routine, except I get up, have my coffee, and I go to my office in my house. And you just kind of have to be able to compartmentalize, like, nah, this is a work time. But the great thing about being a freelance illustrator or artist is that you set your own hours. So if I want to go for a walk in the middle of the day, my wife's like, she works from home too now, and she's like, I have meetings. I'm like, yeah, me too, but I have a bunch of meetings. I'm just like, I'm just walking the dog. The dog and I have a meeting. It's very important. We're going to walk down and walk back. That's our meeting. So I like to be able to work whenever I feel like it. So today, I was doing updates on the Kickstarter, sistcomic.com, currently holding strong at 45 backers. And then I can kind of draw, do some digital layouts, do some rough, and then penciling things or inking things. And then just, go to the pool, or go to drive around. There's not a lot of places I can go, but, and then start working again at night. So my schedule has been pretty consistent, which I think is good. It is tough sometimes, to stay focused. There's so much going on right now. It's, definitely a lot for everyone to be going through. But I think what I've been trying to do and trying to tell everyone else to do is just fill your life with things you love and enjoy. Because there's a lot of negative. There's a lot of things that we should be aware of and we are aware of. But you got to take time to fill your life with things you love and enjoy so that you keep going, keep finding things to motivate you. And for me, it's creating. And it's doing this. And the reason I'm doing a Kickstarter is because I'm like, yeah, I got this cool thing. I've been making it. I want people to have it. And Kickstarter seems to be the way I can find people that enjoy my work and want to support it. And that's how I keep rolling with this. So, so that's kind of my 2020 thus far.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
I saw. Wow, you have a drink with Batman on the can. I'm jealous.
Yeah, I got a lot of koozies because I don't like when the cans get all slippery and then.
Oh yeah, with the sweat. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's so humid right now in southern Maine, and it's been foggy and humid, so all my paper's all warped and stuff. It's kind of gummy. So yeah, there's a lot of that sort of moisture's not great for traditional illustration, for inking. The ink takes a while to dry, but I like working in the winter. So that's usually what I've done previously is try to create a lot of stuff in the winter because the air's real crisp and there's nowhere to go anyway, especially in Maine. There's just kind of trapped where you are. But this has been fun to be able to work in the summer and to try to create as much stuff as I can. And I can flip the camera. I can show you some of my stuff on my drawing table.
Yeah, let's check it out.
All right. I'm going to flip the camera. So I think I can just rotate it. Don't get dizzy. Here we go. How's that look?
That looks awesome.
All right, cool. So we have a bunch of art available at sistcomic.com. And put there we go. As a URL. So a bunch of original art reward levels. So this is the main character, Sist, the skin grafter. The concept behind him is that he is an ancient, hungry creature from the deep, has risen to the surface to wreak havoc on a violent world. It's totally an over-the-top Chromium Age 90s action comic, inspired by all the things I love, and connected in the larger the Dylanverse, as Bill Walko has named it. So some of these drawings are available at sistcomic.com if they get an original art level. And then a few of these, I was like, you know what? I got quite a few pencil and ink drawings. Maybe I can give some to people. So some of these drawings, like this one and this one, I was thinking, you know what? Why don't I offer these to backers if they're willing to and kind enough to share the campaign? So if they back the campaign and then they share the heck out of the campaign, help us hit goal and help us hit, I'd love to get to 100 backers. If we can hit that, that would be radical. And I've been very, very appreciative to all the people that have decided, yeah, man, let me back this campaign. Let me share this campaign. And then that way I'm able to find new people that like what I'm doing. And then I can just send them art when I'm done as a thank you to them for being kind enough to promote the Kickstarter. So like this one I'll give to somebody, you know, because what I do is, and I can show you that too. My technique has been lately to do a pencil drawing and then in a blue line drawing, and I ink the blue lines. So you'll see here, this is like the pencils of my character Versus, who's in the Oppressors. Mm-hmm. And I pencil it, and then I scan it, and I print out a blue line, and then I ink the blue line on a separate piece of paper. That way we got two drawings. And if the reasoning behind that is I would spend so much time doing the penciling that it always felt like kind of a waste to just erase it when I inked it. So I wanted to have two separate pieces of art. And so like this one I penciled, and then I'll show you over this huge stack of art. This is what the blue lines look like. And then I will ink those blue lines. This is a commission from one of my backers. So I have a lot of artwork. Artwork is available as a reward level. And if somebody grabbed a couple of drawings or wanted to support the campaign by getting artwork, yeah, just tell me which one you like. If it's like, oh man, I love that one with the huge face on it, which should probably be that one. I'd be like, oh, this one? I'd be like, yeah. I'd be like, awesome, I'll send you that one. That's kind of how I'm doing it. Once people grab them, then I just say, oh, that one's taken. I think that's kind of a nice way to be able to differentiate the different pieces. And also doing commissions. So if you're like, oh man, I'd love to have you draw Savage Dragon, I'd be like, yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to draw Savage Dragon. I would totally do that. I've done a lot of cool commissions. A lot of people have come up with some really fun characters. I've done Batman quite a bit, Daredevil. Who else? Red Hood is fun. Batman Beyond is fun. Some obscure like KG Beast and Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern. I love all of those characters. I love any character anybody wants to come up with. The only time the commissions get a little tricky is if they're like, oh, will you draw My Little Pony? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think you'll like it. I'm like, I could draw it, but I think probably it'll look weird in my style. And they're like, no, I want that. I'm like, all right, well, you're getting a weird looking My Little Pony then. So.
You're going to get Sis destroying My Little Pony.
Exactly. If somebody wanted to get that, I would do it for sure. The thing about the people ask me like, oh, what's a hard commission to do? You know, if you're doing a commission, what's a tricky one? And I'm like, actually, the ones that are tricky are the characters that only have one version. The characters that are very strictly regulated by merchandising. So if someone's like, I want to draw Mickey Mouse. Well, Mickey Mouse has very strict style guides. So there's only one way to draw Mickey Mouse. And any other version of Mickey Mouse looks wrong. Similarly to like Bart Simpson. So a lot of animated characters, you know, My Little Pony, they have very strict style guides. Mm-hmm. And if you know, Dragon Ball, that's another one. People are like, oh, draw Dragon Ball. It's like, yeah, but if I draw it, then it's going to look like my version of it, which isn't going to look correct because the animation has that sort of very strict guideline. It's a fun challenge, but if you think of like Batman, there's no wrong way to draw Batman because everybody's drawn him differently. So any version of Batman is the right version. It's your version of Batman.
Oh, yeah. It's changed dramatically over the years.
Exactly. You could do the Kelly Jones. You could do the Garcia Lopez, you could do the Mignola, you could do the Sean Murphy. All of those are accurate because every artist has his own interpretation on the costume and the cape and the horns and the ears.
Yeah, there's no wrong way to draw Batman.
Right, there's no wrong way. So,
well, unless I'm drawing.
No, even your version, I'm sure, is the correct version. It's just your correct version.
My correct version will not get published.
Well, I've heard people say that, geez, it'd be cool to work on Batman. Obviously, it's an iconic character, but the pressure that must come from the publisher, like that's their tentpole. You can't, you can do anything you want on a commission, but if you want to actually have published work with a big publisher, they're going to be really, really particular, I would assume. I don't have any frame of reference. Please don't quote me on that, but I would assume it would be tough, which is why it's so amazing that Sean Murphy's, he's just so profoundly talented as an illustrator. And the fact that he has the Murphyverse, this idea that they're like, yeah, here's the keys to the car. That's so incredible and so inspiring that you see that, because I hope that they continue to allow that sort of thing to occur, because I think you can get some Batman year ones out of that. You can get some Dark Knight Returns out of that. If you don't give Frank Miller the opportunity to create, if you don't give Alan Moore the Killing Joke, if you say it's a little too dark or it's a little too violent, which it is, then you don't come up with that incredible piece of work that's people study and appreciate for generations. So I'm hoping that, if anything, this new sort of dynamic is that we're able to have different creators, have their work be seen. I want more stuff out there. I don't want there to be less things. I want there to be a lot of awesome things, and everybody that wants something awesome can find something awesome. That's why I make work. That's why I try to find an audience. I've found an audience for what I'm doing, because I think people realize that I'm passionate about it, and they know that I'm trying to make really awesome stuff for everybody. That's my goal.
Yeah, I think I saw one of your updates a couple of days ago where you were working on the close-up of the headshot. Yeah,
this one is, I'm thinking this will be the B cover, the variant cover, and I've digitally colored it. I use iPad Pro for a lot of my my digital color stuff. And I also hire a colorist. Oracle is the guy who's been coloring a lot of my work. I'll show you his work. So this is this is his colors. Phenomenal colorist. And this is a Pressers issue 1, available in a bundle at sistcomic.com. And his work, I love collaborating. I think comic books are a collaborative process, but currently I do really, really enjoy learning about all of the different parts and pieces of self-publishing. So I was thinking about it. I'm like, geez, I could hire somebody to ink, right, or my pencils, and then I could hire somebody to letter, the balloons, the dialogue, and then I could hire somebody to color it, and then I could hire somebody to write it, and then I could hire somebody to pencil it, and then might as well just go buy a comic book at that point. It's not mine anymore. I don't get to learn all of those parts. If I hand them off to people, I'd much rather try to do all of it and get good at all of those aspects of creating and publishing, because that's what I want. I want to learn new things. I want to learn new skills. I hate being stagnant. I hate feeling like there's no more hills to climb. And 2020 this is my opportunity to be able to just be like, how do I do that? So I learned Clip Studio, which is a piece of software. I wanted to learn it. I learned it. The new Affinity programs, which are kind of an Adobe version of a newer, different company doing Adobe-ish products called Affinity, learned them. Procreate on iPad, incredible piece of software, incredible tool to be able to. I've been doing some digital inking on that. Yeah, love it. So I think that's always been my motivation, and I think that's a lot of creative people's motivation, to just keep learning new skills and keep making new stuff.
And to keep on going.
Yeah, yeah, and especially with things are the way they are right now. Um, this is the chance. Like there's nowhere else to go. I mean, I've been home now. I go a couple places, but I used to go out and work at a studio with my friends, and that's not a thing anymore. And I used to go to conventions, and that's not a thing anymore. And I used to go to the comic book store, and that's not really a thing anymore. So now's really the opportunity to stay in and get good at whatever it is you're passionate about. For me, it's self-publishing, making comics.
Let's take a look at your Kickstarter.
Yeah, let's do it. So I go to sistcomic.com. We launched on Monday, and we are like at 80 something percent funded. And I have previously been able to hit goal on my last 9 campaigns, so I'm optimistic. I'm sure I'll hit goal. And I have a great bunch of stretch goals that I would love to unlock. I'd love to be able to offer all these different sort of stretch goals to people. I think that I always over deliver. So any of my previous Kickstarters, if people have backed any of my work, if anybody has been kind enough to share and support my work, I always provide them with extra stuff. So as soon as we hit goal, they're going to get a digital versus 0 issue, because I just want to say, hey, thank you so much for supporting the work and backing the work. And I want to be able to send that out right away to just kind of be like, hey, this is a celebration. We're all in this together. I'm trying to make awesome stuff for everyone. And thank you so much. I realize there's a lot of things you could spend your time with. And the fact that people want to spend their time with stuff I'm making, incredibly appreciative, incredibly generous, incredibly kind of them to do that. So it's going to be running for the entire month of July, which I think is I've done them in the summer before. I've done campaigns in the summer, and they've always been good. There's no perfect time, there's no great, like, oh, only run them in January or only run them in March. I mean, there's really no perfect scenario. Really, the best thing to do is prove that you'll produce the work and that you'll provide all the content and all the products that you say you will. And I've done that. I think people that get my work are always kind of like, yeah, this is what he said he'd send us, and he sends us all the things that he says he's going to send us. So.
We can see right here that a colored version of the close-up of Sis.
Yeah, that's going to be the B cover. So the A cover is that one where he's like kneeling on a boulder, and then that's the A cover, and then the B cover will be this. And I'm really hoping that if we hit that stretch goal, I'll be able to provide every physical reward backer with both A and B cover comics. That's kind of the thing, is like people could get in for a single issue and get both issues, or get a standard cover, variant cover, and a sketch cover, a blank sketch cover. I really want to be able to hit those stretch goals, motivate people to share the campaign, motivate people to back and to get high tier levels if that's something that they're able to do or want to do, and then be able to provide them with a bunch of awesome content. And I love making comics. I think that people that see my work know I'm passionate about it, and I love being able to find people that enjoy my work and want to support it. It means the world to me. So thank you to all 45 backers that have gotten us at 80% funded, almost a goal in the first week. And I'm looking forward to crushing goals. So hitting the main goal is awesome, but we want to crush goals. I want to move on to stretch goals. Got a bunch of like other little tchotchke things too, like stickers and mini prints. I usually offer mini prints with people with rewards.
Now, yeah.
Bookmarks, stickers, coasters. I've done that. More content in the book, bonus PDF stuff. every time I do a campaign, I really try to make sure that I'm offering a lot of different reward tier levels, because some people are like, oh man, I really want to get a commission. It's like, great. This is an awesome opportunity to do that. It helps us get closer to goal, and you can get a drawing of a character you really love. Or some people are like, oh man, I'd really love to get this giant head drawing of Cyst. Be like, great, that's an original art piece. You want that? That's the B cover for the book. It's available. Jump on it. There's only one. And if they just want to get a digital copy, they can do that. And if they just want to get a single issue of Cyst issue number 1, cool. Love to have them get the book. So definitely a lot of different options.
Yeah, I just want to read down some of them.
Do it.
So your 0 level is digital download with the PDF of Cyst issue 1 and a PDF of the Oppressors.
Yep.
Then we go to a physical copy of Cyst issue 1 and a mini print.
Yep.
And a physical copy of Cyst issue 1, a Warhood 0 blank.
Yep. I have a blank cover comics of Warhood 0, and I thought, I got a few of those left. Maybe people would want one of those.
In the mini print. And
yep.
Physical copy at Cyst issue 1, Archive volume 1 and 2, and a mini print.
Yep. And Archive, those books look like this. So that's volume 1 and the green cover. And then that's volume 2 with the red cover. And then that's the Oppressors comic. And really, anything, and people can add stuff and subtract stuff. I've had that happen where they're like, oh man, I already have the Oppressors issue 1. Can I get a Warhood 0 instead? It's like, yeah, sure. And I try to make those levels available, but people can mix and match. Just send me a message. I'm flexible.
Various levels of original artwork.
Yeah, and some levels from my buddies too. So you can get sketch covers with drawings on them. You can get full original pieces from the comic, which would be like cover pieces. There's 4 of those available. There's commissions. So if there's a character that you want me to draw, I would do it 11 by 17 pen and ink like this. If there's a particular character or multiple characters that you'd like to see. And then, my buddy's artwork is also available. But if nobody grabs those drawings from my friends, I get to keep them. That's what I told them. I told those guys, I'm like, hey, draw my character and send it to me. And they're like, okay. And I'm like, and if nobody backs for those levels, I'm keeping the art. And they're like, okay. So I've seen Ian Chase Nichols' drawing of Cyst. It's incredible. Bill Walco just sent me his drawing of Ledge. It's incredible. Chris Vance's drawing of Cyst, also incredible. And Luis, he told me he's drawing it. He told me he's working on them, and I'm sure it'll be amazing. Because if you know those artists, they're buddies of mine, and their stuff is fantastic. And I was just talking with them today, Bill, and I was like, man, I got to do something where I get you guys in on the project somehow. Maybe that's the next thing. Is I have this world that I've built with all these wacky characters. And it's so much fun to see my friends' versions of them. Like Paul Pelletier did the variant cover. He's a Marvel DC guy. He's a fantastic artist. And I'm sure you've met him at shows. He does a lot of East Coast shows. So Paul Pelletier is a friend. And he did the variant cover of Volume 2 of Archive. And seeing his version of my character Warhood, I was just blown away. I'm like, man, it's just so much fun. And he did things that are a little different than I would have done, but obviously incredible. And I'm like, I'm taking that. Like, I didn't think to do that, but I'm working that into my version. Like, how did he think that? And just so much fun.
And the possible stretch goals.
Yeah, so I'd love to hit these mega goals. So I want to obviously hit the main goal, but if we hit 3K, add an expanded Ledge backup story, so make the book bigger. If we hit 4K, variant cover for every physical award backer. So they'll not only get the standard cover, him kneeling on the rock, but they'll get the variant cover, which is that one with the big face in color. And then if we hit 6K, everybody gets 3 comics. Is kind of how I was thinking. They get standard cover, variant cover, and then a blank, a variant that they themselves could draw on, or you could bring to me at a convention and I'll draw on it. So they'd have 3 different copies of the comic that they, you could back for 1 single issue and get 3 issues, as long as you can pull in enough friends to help us get to those stretch goals. And then 8K is kind of a stretch, but that's why you call it a stretch goal. I'd love to get a variant cover from one of my friends, but that would require me to pay them, and that means we need to be able to hit those higher levels. But then people could be getting 4 different covers on a comic in their rewards. So that's kind of how I've tiered it to make it fun, to kind of, but also it's not required. Like, even if we just hit the main goal, which is still awesome and still obviously very achievable at this point, just hitting that main goal, people are still going to get awesome stuff. And if we aren't able to get these stretch goals, I think we can, but right now the focus is to hit that main goal.
I see the video down here with a blue line.
Yeah, hit that if you want. That's I've been using iPad Pro with Procreate, and the great thing about that software is it will record all of your drawing. So it's kind of a fun way to show digital process. I do a lot of speed drawing recordings of my traditional stuff, pencils and ink and stuff, but fun to be able to show people how I draw and how rough things are and how quickly they come together in a digital format. Definitely a different feeling, but what I want with my digital is for it to feel very much like my traditional work. I don't want people to be like, oh, that's clearly digital, and oh, that's clearly pen and ink. I kind of want both digital and traditional to feel like it's the same artist, and that almost indistinguishable is kind of what I'm going for. So hopefully it's successful. I think that with the iPad and Procreate, you can get pretty close. I'm sure there's some people that are probably like, oh, I can see a slight difference in your line quality, or the gray, doesn't look as, looks different or looks flatter. But I think it's, pretty spot on for what I'm doing. I found a bunch of brushes that kind of emulate my current brush set pretty well. So if I'm inking things, I can show you. If I'm doing traditional inking, using a lot of microns, right? And then using a lot of these Pentel brush pens, which have kind of a brush tip, but you can replace cartridges in them, so I can put whatever ink I want in them. And then there's so many great Japanese brush pens out right now. So these are some ones I've been messing with because Dave Finch was using these on his YouTube channel. So I was like, well, if it's good enough for Dave Finch, I'll give it a try. That guy's pretty talented. You see what Dave Finch does, and you're like, yes, show me Dave Finch, you genius. And then I'll go back through and I'll give it a little bit of texture, and that's kind of a Tyler Kirkham thing. A lot of the stuff, like throwing in these little gray, I don't know if you're a fan of his work. He's an incredible talent. Yeah, and he did the variant cover on volume 1 of my book. And his stuff is just crazy good and so nice. Such a nice guy and such a great artist. And so he does, like, he was showing me, or I saw him doing like colored pencil tones at the end of the art to just kind of make everything feel kind of 3D. And so even with my digital stuff, you'll see I go through and I try to add that sort of grit and texture and make it feel, because really the thing about illustration like this and art like this is it's a 2-dimensional surface. I'm trying to trick you into thinking it's a 3-dimensional drawing of a thing. And so the way you can do that is by contrast and composition and perspective and gradients. These sort of tones, and it makes everything look like it's wrapping. It looks like it's textured. It looks like it's moving in space. When it's not, it's completely stationary on a flat white piece of paper. So yeah, you can see in this speed drawing of the cyst in Procreate, I mess around with colors forever. Like I'm just sitting on the couch, like, yeah, what about darker green? What about lighter purple? What about darker purple? So that's why it's always, I think, good to hire a colorist, because for me, the coloring part isn't so much that I don't like doing it or that I can't do it. It's that it takes me a long time. The coloring portion, particularly, I can spend hours just like, what about this color? What about that color? And so it's hard to streamline that process. I don't hit those optimal tones initially. I end up trying to search for them. So actually, I was looking at Alex Sinclair, who's Sin Color. He does a lot of Jim Lee stuff.
Mm-hmm.
His color palette is very limited. He actually was doing a course online, and he's like, here's my Photoshop palette, and it's not that many colors. And he says, I do everything with these colors. And it made me, I was shocked. I was like, that's impossible. He's like, yeah, this is my Superman red, and this is my, Superman blue, and that's it. And it's like, oh my God. Now, of course, he's using, gradients of those colors and hues of those colors, but but still not 100 different colors of blue for Superman, maybe 3. And I was really kind of inspired and shocked by that. And but that's, again, it gets back to why I love learning. Like, I wouldn't have known that until you know that. And now you're like, oh yeah, you don't need a huge, massive palette. You can create incredible covers, and Alex Sinclair does, obviously, with a limited palette.
It's interesting. I would have never even guessed anything like that, especially in this age.
Right. I think that's kind of the problem. And like, if you like, I went to the Kubert School briefly, which was great as an adult education, and I loved my time there. But they were, I've seen other people say, oh yeah, which back then, they would use Dr. Martin inks, and you do like 5 drops of yellow and 4 drops of orange and 6 drops of blue, and that's like your skin tone or whatever. So you're like, wow, that seems really, obviously. Steve Levine, a buddy of mine, a friend of mine, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles artist, he colors stuff like that, and he was showing me his Dr. Martin's inks, and he's like, you got to try to do it like this. I was like, that seems impossible. How could you have such a limited color scale? And he's like, no, you can get everything you want with just these dyes, these inks, these color dyes. And I can kind of see the benefit of it now. I haven't used them, but you can kind of be overwhelmed by, Photoshop and Procreate and Clip Studio and Affinity, because there's just so many options. There's so much that it's hard to know like what the right color is or what the right thing to do is, because there's just a bunch of it.
There's just so many options.
Yeah, and that's why I think colorists are so, obviously, you have to have a real talent for it, a real eye for it. And the guy that does my stuff, Oracle, he does a lot of digital painting, and just phenomenal, just amazing stuff, and able to add too. Like, anytime I send him something to color and he gets it back to me, I'm always like, oh, I didn't think to add that, but he found a way to kind of put something in to make it kind of his own. And I'm like, oh yeah, that totally works for sure. So yeah, those are pages from the story. So as with all my stuff, it's kind of a gritty, black and white outlaw comic style. And then that's versus 0, which is a digital comic, which is going to be going out to all the backers as a thank you once we hit goal. And of course, I'd love to be able to hit goal this weekend, and then be able to move on to stretch goals, because I have a lot of those great stretch goals planned. I'd love to be able to offer all that to backers. It's just a matter of hitting the goal and crushing the goal and moving on to stretch goal.
Now, where did you come up for the idea of?
Yeah, so War Hoods in the future, I want to do a sci-fi comic. Pressers is in the present time. I want to do a masked vigilante comic. And Cyst is in the past. I wanted to do like a Conan-ish sword and sorcery comic with like magic and stuff. And so this idea came to me where, so when I started working on the pages, it's kind of funny. So the Cyst is the backup story in the Oppressors issue 1. Mm-hmm. And I started by doing it just as I wanted it to be just a wordless story, just using vertical panels. I was like, that'd be kind of fun to do a wordless story with vertical panels. And then I just started drawing things. I roughed them out and I'm like, what about like a guy with an axe? And then there's like a castle. And so the main idea for it was I knew all the parts and pieces. And then I just wanted to, you know how like Eric Larson does Savage Dragon is he'll just start and then see where the characters take them, you know? Mm-hmm. This sort of idea that you have a framework. I knew what I wanted to do and how I wanted to progress this monster, essentially, this kind of Frankenstein's monster. But I didn't want to be really strict about, you know, this happens on page 1, this happens on page 2, panel 1, page 3, panel 2. I've written like that before. And I found that when I was in the drawing phase, I was like, oh man, I really kind of put a lot of restraints and restrictions on where the story could go by putting all these requirements into this script. And I like the idea of just kind of rolling it and just having it be fun and exciting and then funny and energetic. But so the Cyst is, I was thinking like, oh, I want him to kind of be like a sea creature. I like, you know, some of those sort of organic looking monsters, right? So I'm like, well, okay, so he's from the, you know, like imprisoned in the ocean, you know, because he's too powerful and kind of a monster, you know, doesn't talk much. Didn't want him to be a stereotypical good guy, just kind of wanted him to be more like a force of, you know, powerful force, you know, a natural disaster kind of thing. And then I was thinking, geez, vampires suck blood. What about if there was like a skin vampire? And so I was like, that's horrifying. So instead of taking blood, it takes skin. And I'm like, well, what about if he uses that skin to kind of like create his cape or his, you know, that gives him energy, gives him power, and makes him kind of fill out his wardrobe. So I was like, well, that's gross. Let's go with that. So that was kind of the gist of it. I'm like, hey, like a skin vampire, kind of a Frankenstein's monster in the sense that he's not good or evil. He's just kind of confused, you know, incredibly powerful, but kind of directionless because he's been imprisoned underwater. So how would a creature that's incredibly powerful and summoned from the depths, how would he respond to this violent sort of sword and sorcery world that he's been thrown into? And I think it's like, is he good? Is he bad? Is he able to survive? You know, are you rooting for him as a character? He's not very, you know, he's not someone that you would traditionally go, oh yeah, he's the hero. Let's I hope he does well, you know, because he's tearing people's skin off. So you're not necessarily the good guy, but compared to other people, he's not the worst guy. And so that's kind of the way I went about it. And I wanted him to be a real source of power in the Dylanverse, the archive universe. So when he is brought into the larger sort of expanded story, I first had to introduce him, and that's what Cyst issue 1 is. Like, okay, what is this thing? How, you know, where does it come from, and why is it walking around? And then the idea is like, okay, so who wants this thing? Who's trying to control this thing? And how does that wrap into the larger sort of story that I'm trying to tell with all the other characters I've created? And so I hope people think that sounds awesome, because man, even just talking about it makes me excited. Like, I'm so excited for people to see this book and be like, this is crazy. Like one person came up with all this insanity, wrote it, drew it all, and then made books out of this, and then combined those books into trades. And then I just want to keep going. Like, that's the thing, is I started, so Batlantic Studios is what I call the studio, the room I'm sitting in drawing. And I call it that because I'm on the Atlantic, right? And I'm like, I like bats, so Batlantic. And I wanted all my comic book heroes had studios, right? There was Extreme Studios, there was Homage Studios, there was Mirage Studios, there was Top Cow Studios, there's Wildstorm Studios. And I'm like, man, back in the day, having a studio, that was like, you'd made it. So I'm like, let's just start with a studio name and then figure it out. And so I created Batlantic Studios, and I wanted there to be like a website where people could, see my newest stuff and order merch. And so I did that. So Batlantic Studios is where you can go if you want to see my store and links to all my social media and stuff, my YouTube channel and my Instagram and everything. If people are interested in following along and seeing the madness unfold.
Yeah, I'm kind of afraid to read this book now.
Oh, good. Then I've done my job. I think that's the thing, is that with this comic, it's an over-the-top 90s chromium age action comic. That's always kind of how I describe my work. And when I'm at a convention, if I say that to someone, I'm like, yeah. They're either like, oh, I love that. That's my favorite time in comic books. That sort of wacky, over-the-top, Youngblood, Spawn, Savage Dragon, Shadowhawk, Darkness. Like, either people go, yeah, that's insane, that's crazy, I love it. Or they go, not for me. And I'm like, you know what? Totally. But honestly, I've been so appreciative and so happy to have found so many people that love my work and enjoy it and want to support it. And yeah, so thank you to all 45 backers that are currently supporting this book at sistcomic.com. It means the world to me. And I love this stuff. I'm going to keep making it. So yeah, definitely jump on board now. Now's a good time to get in.
And you can go right over to the chat and click on the link that's at the very top of the chat for the Kickstarter for this project.
Awesome.
And you can watch many videos that Dylan has made to spice up his Kickstarter page.
Yeah, I try to have a bunch of different stuff. I got a couple of vids. I got a couple of speed drawings on my YouTube channel. It's DylanDistraction.com is my YouTube. And I try to post a lot of speed drawing and some tutorial stuff. People are always like, what kind of pen is that? I'm like, oh, let me show you what kind of pen that is. So I try to have a bunch of multimedia stuff. So yeah, what I do now is I just go out with Micron. I'm doing an 03 to just kind of do holding lines. This is the ugliest phase in the drawing. If anyone ever sees this portion, I'm always a little apprehensive to be like, it's going to be cool, because I'm like, it's going to turn into this. Because at this phase where it's just outlines over blue line, it looks less than ideal. So let me show you again some of the stuff. Like, these drawings are more completed. They don't look as terrible. Not that one looks terrible, but it looks like I'm just doing holding lines. It looks like a coloring book. It looks like a bad coloring book. It doesn't really take shape until you put in all the tones and the ink wash and the gradients. And then it kind of makes sense. So, and these drawings, I'm going to be giving away a few of these drawings to backers that go to sistcomic.com, back the campaign, share the heck out of the campaign, help us get to 100 backers, help us crush stretch goals. And I'm going to be sending original art out to those generous, kind people as a thank you for helping to be able to hit goal. And then some of this art is available for sale as reward levels. So if you want stuff like this big head drawing, that one's available as an original art drawing. Or if you want a commission from me. This one actually is a commission of Sist underwater with the big snake thing. I do commissions of my own characters or characters that other people choose. happy to do it. So if there's anything original art-wise that people want, assistcomic.com, and that helps us get closer to goal and closer to stretch goals. So.
Now, how long? I know you've been doing it for quite a while, but how long has the Dylan verse actually been in existence?
So I started. I was working at a corporate company doing publishing. I was an art director and doing that for years. And I was always drawing and going to the comic book store and trying to learn as much as I could about illustration. But I was also doing a lot of music at the time. I was trying to be in bands, and so I kind of had split my focus. And seeing all these people that I now consider friends, seeing all the work that they were producing, and how crowdfunding had enabled people that weren't going through a publisher, because that was always the thing, is that I got into publishing, but I didn't ever pursue my art being published. I was always on the other end of it, as the graphics department sort of portion. And so doing illustration for a publisher never really was something I thought was an option. Never really thought about it, but I knew everything about publishing in order to be able to publish my own work. So the thinking was, hey, why don't I really kind of try to do a push, create my own characters, and make my own comic books and get them crowdfunded, because that was, suddenly an option that was available in 2000, and geez, what was that? Must have been 5 or 6 years ago now that I started seeing other people doing it and realizing it was feasible. And so I started doing Archive, the Warhood Odyssey, which is this character, Tachi and Era, and I started doing that just in pencil, right? So I just penciled them and then combined them into a comic book, got that comic book printed, did a Kickstarter for it, hit goal, shipped it out to people, and then I was like, let's do it again. So just kind of kept rolling and doing the next book, and then trying to do 3 books in a row to make a trade, and then doing 6 books in a row to make another trade. So Archive was my longest running series. And after that, just recently in January, I was like, man, I love doing that sort of sci-fi, darker stuff, horror hero kind of stuff. But I'm like, I want to do masked vigilante stuff, but I don't think that really fits into the Warhood world. Like, and people ask me like, geez, what's the Oppressors? Is that going to connect with your Archive Warhood stuff? And I was like, yes, probably. But like anything, I kind of was just like, let's see if Oppressors make sense to people, if they like the story. So I launched, successfully Kickstarter funded Oppressors issue 1, which looks like this. And this is my masked vigilante kind of style book. It's like my Batman and Robin story, if they let me do a Batman and Robin story. I had this idea for like an Escape from Arkham Batman and Robin book. And so I'm like, well, let's make my own characters, because that's more fun. And I can do an Escape from Arkham kind of story. And then I am going to continue that series. I want to have Oppressors being kind of always able to go back to it. But then the backup story, Cyst, that I did in the Oppressors, I was like, man, I want that to see what that character is about. And how does he connect, right? Like, if he's in the past and Oppressors is current time and Warhood's in the future, what would link them together? And why would they have to do what essentially is a crossover event? Because I love those sort of 90s crossover comics, right? And so I was like, well, I got an idea. What if and so I won't spoil it, which is what I'm working on now. So the Cyst comic connects with the Warhood and connects with Versus and the Oppressors. And then when people read it, they're going to be like, oh man, he's building to a thing. I hope that it's exciting for people. I'm sure it will be, because it's exciting for me even just talking about it now. It's like the Dylan verse. My buddy Bill Walko's like, it's the Dylan verse. I was like, that's perfect. And if you know me and Bill, he always points out that I say perfect a lot. He's like, is it perfect? I'm like, yes, it's perfect, Bill. So it's perfect.
Well, so when conventions come back in, if I see Bill at a table, I'm going to ask him where the perfect guy is.
Yeah, that's totally it. Yeah, for sure. He'll be like, oh, Dylan? Is he telling you it's perfect? I'm like, yes, Bill, it's perfect. Yeah, Bill's a great guy. I have Ian Chase Nichols, great guy. My buddy Ben and Schmalky, Rich Woodall. I'm so appreciative. And Noah is doing a Kickstarter right now. If you go to The Wreckage is his book. Troy Little is doing a Kickstarter right now. There's so many awesome artists and creators, and I'm just so happy and appreciative. Sean Murphy, he's doing a pretty big one right now. So happy and appreciative that the people that I've met at conventions and the people I've been able to interact with at shows have just been so welcoming and so kind. And the comic books, I think, is an incredible medium. I think that it has, like I say, it's an important part of our culture and has the power to change the world. And I believe that because the cave paintings of Lascaux. It's this idea that we as humans want to tell stories, want to share experiences, want to have these sort of heroes' journeys, and I think that that's something we all can connect with. And I just want more comic books. I want more people, as many people as possible, telling their stories. And the good stuff is awesome, and even the bad stuff is awesome. Like I just want to see it get made. Sean Moore, another one of my friends. I want to see everybody's books. I think that now is an incredible time that we can get our stuff out there. You can create a comic, you can create a website with your work, and just share it. Just make stuff.
Well, I talked to many of my geeky friends, most of which I've all met in the same LCS down here.
Yep.
A lot of us slightly older teenagers, shall we say,
right,
going to for 30 years. And there's been an uptick, I think, in like the last 5 or 10 years of all these people that were like sucked in by the whole, image breakaway universe.
Mm-hmm.
when they first started up. And a lot of those people, they're picking up like 1 or 2 books with like their favorite characters in them.
Yep.
And that's all they're buying. That's all they're buying at the shop. Anything else they're buying is they're just cruising around Kickstarter to see what grabs their eye.
Yeah. So the thing about, I work at a retail, I work at a comic book store, or did before this, because I love comics. I love being around it. And I don't, have a lot of solutions, but I think what I've found, my experience, all I can do is speak about my own experience and my own desire to create. If you go to see the Avengers movie, right, people say, oh, huge movie. Everybody wanted to see it. Everybody wanted to experience it. Very few of those people that went to that movie want to then make a movie, right? Mm-hmm. So nobody's going home and going, man, I got an iMovie on my laptop and I got a phone with a camera in it. Let's make some costumes. Let's write a script. Let's get some visual effects and let's make our version of the Avengers. I would guess that maybe a handful out of the millions of people that saw that movie had any desire to. They just saw it and they said, yeah, I can never do that, and they walk away. Comic books have the very low entry fee, right? If you want to make a comic book, you need a ream of printer paper and a pencil, and that's it. You just fold those pieces 8.5 by 11 in half, start at the beginning, and draw till you're out of paper. And that's really the thing about comic books is that a lot of people that are fans are also creators. And that's the power of comic books that I don't think a lot of people appreciate. Even people that are doing what you're doing now, where you're like, I love it so much, I'm going to just talk about it all the time. You know, that's a part of creating. So this idea that it's, you know, there's some sort of walled, gated community that only publishers can create, and, you know, only superstars, you know, that can make things that are valued. I don't believe that. I believe that everyone that wants to make a comic should make a comic. And if you're unhappy with what you see on the shelves at the comic book store, nothing's stopping you. Make your own comic, and or find other. There's people out there making something you like, you know, regardless of what it is. And I'm sure that you'll be able, even if you find a handful of things, that's, you know, there's people out there doing stuff that they're passionate about and that they want to share with the world. And just, you have to seek them out by going, social media, hashtags, you know, make comics or indie comics, or, you know, there's so many talented people. So I'm always a little apprehensive when someone's like, oh, there's nothing. It used to be so great and now there's nothing. Like, there's never been more, you know? Like, if you can't find something you like now, then you just don't like comics, because there's so much good stuff. There's so many things out there.
Yeah, there's no shortage of new books and ideas coming out right now.
Right. And I think that, like, unlike movies or video games or television shows, you can't make those easily. You can't decide that that's what you are going to spend your Saturday creating. But comic books, you could. You know, animation's hard. Animation requires a lot of, you know, but making comics, it's comparatively it's not easy. Making comics is a lot of work, but the entry level is very low, right? And that's always been the thing, is that I think any of those people that grew up, you know, reading comics, and that's why I think comics need to be more accessible everywhere, because those younger people that, you know, that I was a young kid at a gas station, you know, there was always comic book stores in the nearby town. They were always very, very available. And I think with digital now, there's the DC Universe and Comixology and Marvel. Just go get stuff. Just go find it, support it, buy it. Go to a retailer, or even go to Walmart. Buy those Walmart books. My buddy Paul Pelletier is doing Superman in those Walmart books. My buddy Tyler Kirkham doing a Killer Croc story in one of those Walmart books. Like, those are good books too. You know, if that's all you can get, that's what's closest to you, get it.
Yeah, I remember being a little kid in the 70s, and every Sunday my mother would have me walk up with her to the local pharmacy at the top corner of the street. She'd get the paper and she'd let me pick out like one comic if I was really good. So
yeah, I would go. So it's Colonial Pharmacy in Lower Village in the town I went to school as a kid. And it seemed like an incredibly long walk when I was a kid to go from school, because my mom worked as the librarian. And she's like, go to just go walk around or whatever. If I didn't have like soccer practice, you know, I was a little kid. And so I'd walk to the Colonial Pharmacy, and there's a spinner rack there, and I would just spin and read and spin and read. And I remember one time a guy came over, he's like, hey, put that back. This isn't a library. And I was like, oh, I was so ashamed, because I didn't buy, you know, I'd buy them, but mostly I'd just sit there and stare at them. And actually a comic book store opened during the boom years, Death of Superman. I remember seeing that in there, and Wizard magazines and stuff. And he would just, I would walk to that store when I got, you know, once that opened, right next to the pharmacy. And he would just get the new stuff and just put new prices on things. You know, he's like, oh, that's a collectible, you know, like the straight off the rack, like it's brand new. And he's like, no, that's, already collectible. I'm like, really? I think it just came out. Didn't it just be this price? Like, nope, very limited, very expensive. And so he kind of gouged these kids, and you're like, oh man, that sucks. But whatever, I loved it. And then local comic stores in the town next to me, they would have, I remember going to those, and there's a couple of them, they're just kind of seedy looking, like converted houses and stuff. I remember a few of them, my dad would be like, I don't know if it's safe for you to be going in that store. I don't think it's a store. It's just somebody's living room with comic book shelves. And I'm like, whatever, it seems fine. And that was when I was so young. I'd never, I learned how words were pronounced by reading them.
Mm-hmm.
So at one point I was at Chris Claremont, Mark Silvestri X-Men. It was like an Inferno crossover. And I was at the counter talking to this guy, and what was a converted living room with comic book racks. And I'm like, man, I love the X-Men. I love Rogu. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, she got the white streak in her hair. She steals people's powers, Rogu. And he's like, you're an idiot. That's pronounced rogue. I'm like, I don't know what that word means, but that's not how it looks. And so I didn't know how to say it. Like, I'd never heard anyone speak their names, So like Darkseid or Magneto, it's like, that's how I say it because that's how I read it. And Rogue, that kind of took a while for me to not pronounce it Rogu. But definitely my parents were very supportive of me reading comic books as a kid because they're like, yeah, as long as he's reading, because my dad doesn't read and never learned. So my mom is a reading teacher. And so she was always very adamant, like, these are incredibly educational. Read everything. And so I was voracious. Like, my dad was always like, hey, you want to come chop this wood or run this chainsaw? And I was like, nah, I'll just sit in the truck and read. He's like, oh, whose kid is this? My kid. Reading's the worst. I'm like, nah, reading's the best.
Reading's the best, and I still have all my fingers.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't one of those chopping wood. I've always said there's two kinds of people in this world. The kind of people that like to chop wood and the kind of people that like to read. I like to read. I don't know if that's accurate, but yeah, so they were always incredibly supportive and would, I had so many books. And as I got older and moved and, things in your life change, I got rid of a lot of them. And not that I regret getting rid of a lot of them, but it's hard to have physical copies of things as much anymore. The way my life is, that's why I offer digital reward levels. So systcomic.com, holding strong, 45 back. Because if you'd like a digital reward, you can get digital books. If you like physical comics, I love physical printed stuff. I've been in publishing. I love publishing. I love holding tangible books. I work at a comic book store, so I'm a fan of physical comics too, but I really love trades. And so that's the whole thing with comics is the comic book is for me just I love to build to the trade. So I'm hoping to be able to hit goal with this, get this awesome book in everyone's hands, and then just keep making more awesome stuff.
Well, trades, i.e. graphic novels, are the biggest portion of the market, so.
Yeah, I love, and I like that format. So I love artist editions. So if I look around my room, I'm like, boop, 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 boop. It's trades and artist editions. I want bigger. I want to see the process. I want to see the art. I want to, within reaching distance. Yeah, come here. I got the Batman, the Dark Knight Returns, right? This one, the gallery edition.
Oh, I'm true.
Frank Miller, I know. And so I got that one. That's within arm's reach. Oh, man, what else do I have? This one's actually probably too big for me to lift up. It's the Sin City Hard Goodbye. Oh, this one I need two hands. So this one's actually, I love Frank Miller stuff. And I have Ronin right there, the artist edition. I just like those big style, big format.
Yeah, the big oversized ones.
Yeah.
Especially, you get something from Jack or any of the guys that were at it for like the first 40 or 50 years. And some of those archival editions, you open them up and it's got like their notes all scrolled all over the pages.
And it's funny because those things always were kind of just, it seems like they were almost lost to time because it was production art. So This is stuff I just recently uncovered when I was over at my folks' house. I had a friend when I was in high school. Well, not a friend. I had a person I knew who went to Kubert school. Because I was always like, as a kid, I'm like, oh, man, I want to go to Kubert school. So he sent me these in the mail. At Kubert school, they were teaching them inking. And he's like, yeah, these are the size of comic books. These are comic book pages photocopied. And before artist editions, this was the first I had ever seen as a kid in 96 of what an actual comic book page looked like with notes on it and stuff. So now we kind of take for granted that everybody knows what comic book size paper is, and bleed lines and trim lines. But when I got those, it just blew my mind. It's almost too much. It's almost overwhelming and intimidating to see these professionals in the 90s when I was just a kid. But I love seeing that stuff. I love seeing the work. I love being able to experience it actual size. That's why drawing digitally sometimes feels a little, it's different. It's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the physical art is just such an integral part of the experience. But even when I'm drawing digitally, sometimes what I'll do is I'll do the roughs in digital, because then you can move things around and proportion it. But I still like printing out those roughs and doing either traditional pencils or traditional inks over it. It's kind of create a hybrid technique. A lot of people, I think, are doing that. So definitely a way to get the best of both.
Oh yeah. Well, it still amazes me. Once in a while, I'll get a notification that the Todd father is doing a live drawing and chatting about something.
Yeah.
And he's got a screen bigger than my TV at his for a drawing desk, and he whips something out in like 90 seconds, and I'm like, I can't even draw a stick figure in 90 seconds.
Yeah, and that's I love Todd's work, and I love seeing him drawing on those big Wacom tablets for sure. It's definitely fun to see how quickly he does stuff. But I have the Vault editions of Spawn volumes 1 and 2, and those are scans from the original boards, because he has all of the original art from Spawn.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh yeah, no, there's just a magic that he created, just noodling away. He'd do blue lines and he'd do inks over his own blue lines, and he'd just drawing all those little chains. It's like there's, even with the digital stuff, you can kind of emulate but there's still just something kind of fun about seeing that tactile. And he has one page in there, it's like a cover, and you see that he like spilled coffee on it. So the head of the character is all like smudged, and you're like, oh my god, this is like a real piece of paper that he actually drew on.
It's like, I'll take that page.
Yeah, well,
because that way it's already ruined. I don't have to worry about it too much.
Right. Well, I think having those Vault editions is probably as close as a lot of us are going to get to owning a Todd McFarlane page. But he does tell the story, and he was, he's got his starting out stories, and he was like, yeah, I sold this Venom Spider-Man cover for $600. And it's like, yeah, man. I mean, I love hearing he's almost like an inspirational speaker at this point. I've seen him at San Diego a few times. He just owns the room. He'll just take the mic and just start pacing around like a wild animal and just start firing people up. If you come away from a Todd McFarlane panel and you don't feel inspired to create something, then you're just dead inside, because he's just such a ball of energy and so excited and so passionate, and talking about, maybe a little rose-colored, I think, possibly, with this idea that like, oh yeah, all you have to do is create a comic book, and then the movie studios and Hollywood and Netflix will come calling, and you'll make $1 million. It's like, I think that's your experience. I think, not everybody's, clearly he's had a lot of challenges and adversity with his rejection letter. He tells the story about how he had a garbage bag full of rejection letters, and that he's kept because nobody wanted to hire him. And it's like, yeah, that's, I think, I don't know if that's everyone else's experience, because currently, I think that, like, people say like, oh, how do you break in, right? And it's like, oh, I don't know if you do. Like, I don't know what that means anymore. I don't know if that's a thing. I think that what you do is you just create work because you love it and you're passionate about it, and you find people that love it and are passionate about it. Like, is that what you mean by breaking in? Because that's what I think it means now.
Yeah, there is no more breaking in.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like back in the day they would have, you'd send in submissions to editors, and you'd find them at conventions, and they'd give you a sample script, and then you'd bang it out, and they'd bring you in or call you up and hire you to work on a backup story, and then that's the story Todd tells. I mean, and then you'd get on a monthly, and then do covers, and kind of, I think that's most people's experience in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. And then in the 90s, it shifted to you'd work for a studio. So you'd work for Wildstorm, or you'd work for Top Cow. They'd bring you in Extreme. They would do talent hunts and search for creative people and artists. And then they'd bring you in through that studio system, and you'd apprenticeship, and you'd learn from these pros. And you kind of trial by fire. And that's how you get Dave Finch. That's how you get Michael Turner. That's how you get Tyler Kirkham. That's how you get Richard Friend. That's how you get, all these, Todd McFarlane, of course, had Greg Capullo, and then those guys that were from those studios are still the guys that are the top talents today. You look at any guy that you're like, oh, I love his work, and he probably, if he's of a certain age, he came up through that farm league, and I don't. That's not a thing anymore either. Now it's almost like the Kickstarters, or the social media, or the crowdfunding is kind of that is the league. It's like, I don't know if the goal is to even move up to major. I don't know if that's even an option. So I think if you can, like, I've heard people say, like, oh no, if you can crush it and find people who love your work, then just keep doing that. It's like, yeah, that's my goal. My goal is to just make awesome stuff and find people that love my awesome stuff and want to support it. So go to assistcomic.com. Currently holding strong at 45 backers. Thank you to all 45 backers. I really appreciate it. Let's crush goal so we can move on to stretch goal.
Yeah, I think the new indie is just crowdfunding, whether it's Kickstarter or Indiegogo or however people like to do it. It's talked to one creator the other day. He didn't go through crowdfunding or anything. He just made it himself, and because he was the writer, but he hired all the other people to work on the book.
Right.
And while they were doing that, he was taking art gigs from other people, finishing those projects, and using the money from those projects to pay the people that worked on his project.
That sounds like the indie creator hustle. I love it. I completely understand. And yeah, I wonder, crowdfunding is an incredible opportunity. I saw Rick Remender, I think, and I don't want to misquote him, but he said crowdfunding in my day was just maxing out your credit cards. And it's like, isn't it great that we don't have to, that's not the only option for self-publishing anymore. And print on demand has caused it to be easier to afford. You don't need to do an offset print run of 3,000 books or 10,000 books to get a price break where you can afford to charge $5 to $10 a copy. That previously was a big hurdle. So now with print on demand, you can do 100 copies. You can do 200 copies. Extremely limited, extremely exclusive, and you can fulfill quickly, and the price is affordable relatively, and you can provide that content quickly, and the quality is really good. Print on demand used to be, it didn't have the same look as an offset book. It felt different, but now it's almost indistinguishable. If I handed someone an average reader an offset comic or a print on demand comic, a digital comic as they're called, I doubt any of them would be able to tell me which was which. And if they could distinguish the difference, I don't know which one they would prefer. It's not like it was. So that's incredibly important for a small publisher. And then digital options, right? Everybody has an iPad. I remember when the iPad first was announced, I said, oh my God, this is going to change publishing. This is going to change comic books and illustration forever. And people are like, what are you talking about? Like, all you have to do is figure out a way to make a pressure sensitive pen for an iPad, and you have a tablet you could draw digitally anywhere. There's no more, you don't have to have a huge Wacom $3,000 device hooked up to a computer that's another $3,000. And and comic books, I'm like, this is the perfect size for reading something digitally, because before that it was the Kindle, which was black and white, or I think the Nook was around back then too.
Mm-hmm.
So these e-readers, as they were called, I'm like, yeah, that's not, people tried to do comics on them, and I'm like, yeah, that makes no sense. It just doesn't look like a comic. It doesn't have the graphics are terrible. The colors terrible. Like, it just doesn't look right. Kindle Fire was another one, I think. But as soon as the iPad was like, no, we got this figured out. You can read a comic on this thing. Bam, explosion. Like, that's kind of when I was, thinking that, I could just make a comic and just email it to people. The cost for distribution and printing is zero at that point.
Mm-hmm.
There's literally nothing stopping me. And if I draw it on an iPad, I don't even have to buy the paper and pens at that point. I don't have to buy any art supplies at all. So definitely a game changer. And I don't know if, crowdfunding will go the way of MySpace. I don't know. I mean, I lived through the rise and fall of MySpace, and people, I think, forget that. They're like, oh yeah, whatever happened to that? I'm like, oh, it was only the hugest social media platform of all time. We all were on it, and it was really important for a while. And now it's not anything at all. And will Kickstarter, will Indiegogo, become that? I hope not. I hope if it does, then something better takes its place. But again, those are things that are, that's not under any of our control. So I guess we'll just have to
wait and see.
Yeah, just kind of wait and see. So I'd love to be able to say, oh, I can see the next thing coming. But if I could, if I could predict what the next, because comic books, I think they're going to be around forever. I think that there's too many people that love it for it to just go away. I think that there's always, even if there is a shrinking market, I still think it's a very active, very engaged market. So I'd love if comics were growing and were, the next hot thing, but I'm very comfortable and very happy with them just consistently being part of our culture. And you look at Japan, and manga, like that's just, it's just a part of what people enjoy. And I think that comic books have that same opportunity here.
Yeah, it's not. I was going to say, back in my day, you used to have to make the whole comic yourself and then hope somebody out of previews would actually order enough copies so they could fulfill it.
Yeah. And that's, I think of that too, where if the comic book shop didn't have it, like I just couldn't ever see it. It's like, that's, and I remember there were so many comic stores and there's so much out there. I think of like Death of Superman. It was in the poly bag with the armband. Mm-hmm. And I had bought all the previous build-up to Death of Superman off the book rack at my grocery store. So I'd walk from school to the grocery store, go in, kind of flip through all the bent copies of Superman and Action Comics. And I got all the Doomsday countdown stuff, right? Just there. And I'm like, this is cool. Doomsday, what's going on? I don't even know. Like, you didn't know. It's not like you could go online and be like, what is this counting down to? I don't understand. And so, Doomsday is running wild, beating up the Justice League at the time, who was an odd combination of like Ice and Guy Gardner and Martian Manhunter pretending to be somebody else, I think. Guardian, I think, he got his ass kicked by Doomsday. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I've been reading this story. I don't know what's going to happen, but clearly this Doomsday thing is building up. And I didn't realize at the time, but the panels were changing. So it was like, started with 8, then went to 6, then went to 4, and then the last issue was just single panel. And of course, I couldn't get the Death of Superman issue, right? It was in a black poly bag with an armband, and it just wasn't available. Like, it was not a thing you could find. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, how could this not be something I can get? But you just couldn't get it. And so it was one of those things where suddenly the media caught on that it's the death of Superman. It got huge. It was in the news. So people were like hoarding them. I saw one copy of it at like a flea market in Florida that summer, but it was like $100. And I'm like, there's no way. So I ended up getting the trade at that store I was telling you about, where the guy was screwing over all the kids, and he's like, "Yo, this trade of this Death of Superman, this is a $20 book." And then of course I take it out of the ply bag, and the price tag is like $5. But I was like, "Oh, he swindled me. This is not a $20 trade; it's a $5 trade." But I got to read the story, and so I'm like, "Worth it, worth it." I got to see what happens.
Yeah, everybody thought they were putting all their kids through college.
Yeah.
They're actually killing Superman. No, it's comic books. They're not actually killing anybody ever.
Yeah, and I remember the Nightfall Batman getting his back broken stuff. I bought all those, all the Kelly Jones covers, and that's about the time that Wizard magazine started being a thing. And I was like, so you read about all these creators that you didn't know what they looked like, but all of a sudden there was like this top 10 hottest artists list in the back, and I'm starting to sound like an old guy too, where I'm like, back in my day, we'd read Wizard magazine, and they would tell us what the new hottest artist was. And you're like, what? That's crazy. So, but it's true. That's how you knew what Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri and Rob Liefeld looked like. He's the guy from the Levi's commercial. And you're like, oh yeah, I saw that guy in a Levi's commercial once.
But yeah, I used to collect Wizard and another big one for me.
Hero. Do you remember Hero magazine?
Hero magazine, Comic Scene.
Well, they always had that one that was the Comics Journal, and I never got that. Like, I now hear about it, and it's like, oh man, the Comics Journal was so important and such a huge industry trade, and preceded the Wizard magazine, and it was, that was where people got their news and information. And I'm like, I had never heard or had seen that in my entire life. I don't know where I was. I was in comic book stores every day, and that wasn't a thing around where I was. And I wonder if there's, there's those things where you got lost in the shuffle or slipped through the cracks. But I remember Hero, I remember Wizard, but yeah. So yeah, I would just keep inking this. This will take me a couple more hours. I don't know if I'll have the energy to do it tonight. But this is a commission. Someone's like, I want a commission. I want of Cyst, the skin grafter from cystcomic.com. I said, awesome, back for that campaign reward level, and I will just draw my character. And they're like, cool. I'm also offering a thing if anybody adds $20 to any of the pledge reward levels, which is easy. You just adjust the pledge and add 20. I'll send them a mask. So I have these cool Warhood masks. And I don't know if I posted about it in the campaign, but I posted about it on Instagram, and you can see them on my Instagram and on my Facebook. I think I posted there too, showing these cool like masks, because everybody has to wear masks, so you might as well look cool while doing it. So I had my own custom masks made, mostly just because I wanted to make them for myself. I was like, I gotta wear a mask. What about if I made my own custom masks that look like my Warhood character's logo on its face? And then other people were like, that's crazy, I want one. So I'm like, all right, add $20 to your reward level, and I'll send you a mask with your books. So that's another little perk incentive I'm doing. So yeah, what else do you want to know? Have I told you everything? Have I talked your ear off?
I'm pretty sure you have, yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Get to see some big giant books.
Yeah.
As you almost fall out of your chair.
Yeah, did it pull the camera off the thing? I was like, crap. I forgot my headphones are attached. You get a cool view of the ceiling and then the floor as it falls.
All you see in my house is the ceiling, because I live in a loft, so...
If I did a pan of the room, you'd just see a bunch of comic books, toys, posters, artist editions, computers, scanners, and guitars. It's quite the man cave.
Seems about right.
Yeah, that's about what I'm all about. Anybody that knows me would go, yeah, that's about the room I would expect to be. Have you sitting in for 20 hours a day? Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, most of my collection is in storage at a buddy's house, and COVID has stopped me from reclaiming it now that I have a place big enough to put it all in.
Yeah, this new dynamic that we're all living through is definitely had to make some adjustments and do some things differently. But I'm very, very fortunate that I'm in a place that's comfortable and able to be productive. And yeah, my heart goes out to all the people that are struggling, and hopefully everybody's able to find some peace and joy. That's my wish for everyone. So.
Peace, joy, and comic books.
Yeah, exactly. Find some cool comic books. If you can, now's a great time.
Here's one right here.
There it is right here, sistcomic.com. Please go to sistcomic.com right now and help us get to goal. We are very close. If you, right now, listening to this or watching this live or on replay, go to sistcomic.com, grab an original art level or a commission level, and you've seen me flip through one of these that you like, and you're like, oh man, I love that one with the big face. Awesome. It's yours. Shoot me a message, back the campaign, grab an original art level, grab a commission level. And if we have a couple of people, or maybe even just one person, grab one of those, I think we'd be over goal. So think about it, do it, make it happen, and you'll be a hero to all the people that are backing, because everybody, the 45 backers that are currently helping to bring this project to life, are just waiting for you out there to grab an original art or a commission level so that we've hit goal, and then everybody will be like, oh, awesome. I get my thing now, because it doesn't get made until we hit the goal. And you don't get charged until the campaign ends. It's another thing about Kickstarter that some people aren't always aware of. Back big. Go big right now, because you don't get charged right now. You don't get charged until the 31st. It goes all July. So you have plenty of time to raise the funds for that awesome piece of original art, or that commission, or that sketch cover that you really want to add to your collection. And of course, everything comes signed. And the more stuff we unlock, the more awesome stuff you get sent to you. So you might think, oh, I'm just getting a comic book. But no, if we hit those stretch goals, you're getting all these other things, mini prints and bookmarks and digital downloads and my signature on things and my gratitude. So a bunch of great stuff.
Plus, you can get the entire library of the current Dylan-verse.
That's true. I know that's the thing, is that I've made a lot of comics, and as an indie guy, like, I just love telling stories and making art. And so there's volumes 1 and 2 of Archive. There's the Oppressors issue 1, which is going to be a continuing series once I get back to it. I just kind of wanted to have a lot of stuff in the air. I like the idea of starting series and then always being able to be like, yeah, I can just jump right back into that series whenever I want. That's the thing, is that there's no real timelines. There's no publishers' deadlines that I have to adhere to. So if I want to work on Sist for an issue or two, I can. If I want to jump over to the Oppressors for an issue or two, I can. If I want to do some sort of huge crossover event, which is actually currently what I'm working on, I can. And if you want to come along for the ride, if you love over-the-top 90s Chromium Age action comics, you're in luck, because that's the kind of stuff I make. It's outlaw, black and white, gritty, singular vision, solo creator comic books.
Make sure you click on the link right in the chat. It'll bring you right to the Kickstarter for Sist. And you too can be reading this book.
Yeah. And I'm incredibly appreciative to everybody that's watched me draw and that enjoys watching my work and enjoys my work and shares my work. It means a lot to me. And I got a lot more stuff coming, so keep watching.
Get in on the ground floor.
Yeah, because I'm going to be working all 2020. I mean, that's just kind of I'm just saying to Tracy, I'm like, my mindset is just see how much I can do in, the 12 months I have that I know I'm just going to be grinding out awesome stuff and making work and doing cool things. So that's my vision board for 2020 is just crushing awesome things.
So he's going to be making comics until the dragons show up.
Exactly.
Hopefully the dragons like comics.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty, but the one thing I'm certain of, and the one thing I have control over, is that I can be excited and motivated to produce stuff every day. And so that's what I wake up doing. I'm like, hey, what's today look like? I get to draw, and I get to write, and I get to ink, and I get to pencil, and I get to digitally, color stuff. And I'm like, that's a good day. Any day I get to do that's a good day. And with your continued support, everyone out there, I can continue to make awesome stuff for you. So go to assistcomic.com, DylanAndrewsArt.com, PatLanticStudios.com, DylanDistraction.com is my YouTube channel, if that's the kind of thing you like doing. Twitch.tv/PatLanticStudios, which is also just another live thing. What I do is I multicast Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. So whichever platform you want to watch me draw on, awesome. I love to draw live for people. I love to take suggestions for characters. I love to do commissions. And I appreciate everybody that likes what I'm doing.
Make sure you keep them working. Click on that Kickstarter link and become part of this project.
Yeah, totally. And thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. I hope I wasn't been drone on too long.
Oh, no, I'm just sitting here watching you draw, and I'm like, oh.
I'm glad. Yeah, I think that I love watching other people draw too. That's why I do it, because I've done, a couple, I don't do a lot of these sort of talk to the camera, interviewee things, because it's like, does somebody really want to look at my face for 2 hours? It's like, I don't know. Like with me, I prefer when a creator is creating, right? So I want to see their process. I want to see how they, what pens they use and what techniques they use. So I always, if I can, try to draw while I'm talking personally, just because it's like, that's what I would like to see, so that's what I try to do. So I hope people dig it.
I definitely do.
Good.
So I'd like to thank you for joining me tonight on Creators Outlet here on the Outright Geekery Network. And I can't wait for the book to hit out. And I know you're going crazy.
Just hot here. I turned off the fans because I'm like, I don't want the fans making a lot of noise.
All the fan noise, yeah.
Summertime in Maine, I should have a fan on. I'm a little warm, but and the lights are hot too. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. This has been wonderful chatting with you. And go to assistcomic.com.